We live in a volatile, uncertain world where product life cycles are shrinking, tech changes are accelerating, and geopolitical pressures are building. This mix has made what has often been called a solitary job even more challenging. I'm talking about the CEO of the 21st century. As per McKinsey research, the average CEO tenure in the US has decreased from 10 years to less than 7 years. Leaders today have to not just deliver on shareholder returns, but also steer their organizations through an era of changing regulations, disruptions in supply chains and distribution networks, fast-paced digitization, heightened public scrutiny, and social media activism. So what does the job of a CEO entail today? And is there a value pattern that separates the good CEOs from the very best? I've often wondered about the so-called CEO effect, and it was revelatory to me to see these questions being answered by a team at McKinsey in their best-selling book, CEO Excellence. Now, the book attempts to codify the winning mindsets of some of the world's best CEOs, leaders who've led large public companies for at least 6 years and more and delivered excess total return to shareholders. So, what are these 6 mindsets that McKinsey believes differentiates the best leaders of the 21st century from the rest? And more importantly, what do they achieve? In the words of the authors, these mindsets enable them to navigate the dominant features of their environment. That's new competition, disruptive change, digitization, pressing social and environmental issues, or economic meltdowns with wild success, while others wallow in mediocrity.
Well, the process had perhaps had 3 parts to it. Part number 1 was we at McKinsey obviously do a lot of our own research on CEOs and CEO excellence, on CXO leadership, on board excellence. And so we had a lot of facts and figures and data to kind of really hint at what great CEOs do and, what are the things that you see from an output point of view from great CEOs. But we felt a book on that would be pretty boring. So the second step was to really identify some terrific CEOs to go interview. We started out with roughly 3,500 CEOs who've been CEOs over the last 25 years. We narrowed that down by putting on 2 criteria. One, we wanted to talk to CEOs who'd been enrolled for at least 6 years. And secondly, we wanted CEOs who had delivered, call it top 20% shareholder returns. We made a few exceptions to get geographic and other forms of diversity in the pool, but that narrowed the group down to about 200 CEOs. We were fortunate to reach out to about 75 of them, and 67 of them said yes. And so that then led to the third part of the process, which was to interview these CEOs in a fairly structured way around topics like strategy and organization and leadership and teams and their own operating model. And it was out of these structured interviews that these 6 mindsets emerged.
So this got us thinking, could we turn the lens on Indian companies and CEOs and put together a playbook for outperformance or excellence? Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but as McKinsey's research shows, there are common values that best CEOs exhibit, which guide them in their decision-making. So we got down to identifying high-performing CEOs based on some very specific criteria.
So how did we go about shortlisting and identifying these excellent CEOs? Well, we mirrored the global framework that was used in the CEO Excellence book, largely starting with the companies that delivered top quintile, top 20% of TRS performance in their respective industries. Using that, we came out with a short list of CEO names, and then we applied a filter of at least a 5-year tenure. And this tenure ensured that there was a longevity to institution building as well, in addition to just the operational and financial goals that they were able to deliver. That gave us a set of 20 CEOs. And then we added, in the interest of diversity, we added 3 more archetypes of CEOs, a few public sector CEO leaders, a few women leaders, and also the unicorn leaders. And that collectively gave us an excellent and diverse class of 25 CEOs.
Well, with the shortlist of the CEOs done, the actual work began. As the philosopher Gulfe said, boldness has genius, power and magic in it. And CEOs that have made the maximum impact are the ones who haven't been afraid to make big bets. As per McKinsey's research, an analysis of 3,925 of global companies over an 8-year period points to 5 big strategic moves that yield the highest probability of jumping from an average performer to a top profit generator. Now, these include decisions to buy or sell assets or businesses, invest in differentiation, improve productivity, and strategic capital allocation. One of the key winning mindsets that high-performing CEOs share is their ability to reframe the rules of the game or draw out a fresh vision board for the company which changes the metrics of success. Like what Ajay Banga did at MasterCard when he brought in a strategic shift, pivoting the company away from focusing on growing the electronic commerce market, which accounted for just 15% of transactions at that point, to prioritizing going after 85% of the market that operated in cash. Kill cash became the new strategic vision, which then drove decision-making.
The Ajay Banga example from MasterCard is one of my favorites. He came in 2011. By the way, MasterCard was $17 billion in market cap when he took it over. When he stepped down, it was north of $300 billion in market cap. So quite the journey. But one of the things he observed was that everyone in the organization was talking about beat Visa, beat American Express. And he looked around, and back in 2011, 85% of all consumer transactions was still in cash. And so he came up with a two-word vision, which was kill cash, kill cash. And that gave the organization all kinds of permission to go and build payment technologies that would go after the cash opportunity, to really go after debit card volume, which were at lower margins than credit card volumes, but nevertheless, very profitable, have done well. And it just opened up the aperture at MasterCard for a whole different set of things that could be done.
Like Ajay Banga, Reed Hastings did something similar at Netflix. Now, instead of focusing on being the #1 DVD company in the United States, Hastings dreamt of creating a global entertainment distribution company, which today boasts of video streaming, original content, and a decisive global footprint.
You know, I didn't really set out to be an entrepreneur. There was some ideas that I was excited about.
You taught geometry and algebra as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. I was a high school math teacher. And so it was some ideas that I got so excited about that I had to build a company to see the idea through. So I think if you start with the idea first and the company second, that's probably a good approach. Well, the great thing about the Netflix culture is it's always improving. We're trying to get better, and one of the ways that we're getting better is being more global. So everything from how we schedule meetings to how we write up results so people can read them, you know, at different times, because now we're operating around the world. So we don't look at it as let's take the California culture and make sure that that's the same culture around the world. We want our culture to get better, to be more reflective of the whole world. And every time we open in a country, every time we get great employees to join from around the world, you know, we adjust the culture and we try to learn from them some of the great lessons.
So what is the framework for creating a game-changing vision? Finding and amplifying intersections, making it about more than just money, not being afraid to look back and forward, involving a broad group of leaders in the process, making big moves early and often. The best CEOs make bold strategic moves early and often during their tenure. Like what Satya Nadella did when he took over Microsoft in 2014 and helped steer it back to relevance and high performance. Big acquisitions like LinkedIn and GitHub, doubling down the company's focus and investments in the cloud business, moving towards online subscription model, cutting losses in the mobile phone business by exiting the market. These strategic choices made by Nadella catapulted Microsoft back to the top of the pecking order.
Like if I look back, right, Microsoft was created when Paul and Bill sort of created the basic interpreter for the Altair. Very recently, in fact, we were talking about and marking some big milestones in quantum computing. What did we do? We, in fact, launched a new language for quantum algorithms. We put a simulator in Azure so that developers can now start learning quantum. So I felt that even in the cloud, we can be the ones who can democratize AI infrastructure, so that developers can be successful.
So that, to your mind, is the soul of Microsoft, democratization of technology.
Correct, because in some sense, the soul of Microsoft is we create technology so that others can go on to create more technology or achieve more success because of what they have been able to do with our products. We're that ultimate platform and tool creator. Whether it's Minecraft or whether it's Word or Visual Basic or Visual Tools or Azure, to me, they're all things that allow others to create more technology.
How do you encourage a spirit of competitiveness without combativeness or aggression?
So I've always grown up in the Microsoft that knew how to both cooperate and compete. And I wanted to bring those both back. There are some battles that are zero-sum. You know, we compete against Amazon and AWS, but at the same time, we're happy to bring Cortana to Alexa.
To use Satya Nadella as an example, as he was shifting the mindset and the culture at Microsoft from one of, I am the smartest person in the room, to one that was centered around a growth mindset, that required really hard work in terms of defining the metrics, the measurements, the communications, the role modeling, ultimately the incentives to make that happen. And so for 3 years, Satya talked about nothing but growth mindset, growth mindset, growth mindset at Microsoft to really kind of move the organization.
So what are the attributes that make a great CEO, and why do great CEOs have to be exceptional futurists? We're back after this short break on this special broadcast with the answers to that question.